once again, this is the place, and the place for intellectual honesty, if that can be done or whatever. And so we're attempting to move forward together. We are atheists and theists alike and everything in between, possibly. And hopefully we can make some sense tonight. We're talking about a ball. Yeah, the ball. That's what we're talking about tonight. Big ones, little ones, and possibly a ball in between. And so be patient as we try to make sense with each other. And if I can ask all of you a favor, let's try real hard to understand each other just as much as we try to be understood. And tonight we're not trying to deal with determinate language flux. That is in a sense of we're doing something in a scientific way. That's not what we're attempting to do. The majority of the things that I will put on the table are in this sense. Once upon a time, far, far away, we had this ball. And so I'm simply going to speak in a sense poetically. And I'm going to ask for people to work, if you can, with my usages. And so I feel very comfortable in that people speak, and when they speak, they don't always go with everyone else's usage. And so sometimes people don't even use the most popular usage. They go with something that really resonates with them. And so since words do not have inherent meaning, but they have usage, and since we need to move along in that kind of context, let's get into our show. And so, first of all, I would like to get my co-host in here, Bob Greaves. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. And I love the little chit-chats we're having, and they're fun. And yeah.
Sometimes we do this stuff on FaceTime, and it's a lot of fun. So
yeah,
now we get to go live with it. And let's see what happens tonight. I hope that people don't get dogmatic about some of these dogmatics that we're talking about tonight. And so that's going to be a test. And I have to be honest here. I hope that I learn something about what I'm saying. I hope that someone will say, no, you're wrong, and here's why. Because I would rather have someone say, let me improve your understanding of what you're saying. I'm all about trying to learn and move forward. And so this is why I love atheists in my life. They have intervened for me so many times. And so this is about giving respect to theists and atheists alike, and also to just those people who are agnostic. And so with that said, I want to bring Daryl in before I bring AronRa in. Welcome, Daryl, to the show.
Thank you. I'd just like to say there's no place like this place. This is the place to be. And also, that one ball that you held up, I think was a balloon. It looked like a balloon.
Hey, listen, I have to be honest with you. I bought my grandson some balls. We went swimming, and he was jealous. Can you believe that he got jealous? He got jealous of, all the other little kids having, beach balls in the pool. And so I bought him 3 balls, and I got the smallest one. The other one is, I think it's 4.5 feet tall, something like that. And it's huge. But the bad thing is, when you're in the pool and the wind starts blowing, it's hard to keep up with it. And he can't swim fast. He's only 16 months old, barely talking, but he can say AronRa and Ozzy. And so we're really impressed. In fact, we were doing some footage today trying to get him to say Ozzy, and AronRa. And it was difficult, but he's getting there. And so, yeah. So we have big balls, small balls, and everything in between possibly tonight, even some heavy balls. And so if you are interested in balls tonight, maybe this is the show for you. I don't know, but we're going to have some fun. AronRa, welcome to the show, sir. You are awesome.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to know, thank you very much. I just want to know, does anybody else have an old AC/DC song over your head right now?
An old AC/DC, Highway to Hell.
No. The one I'm thinking of is, never mind. There was about balls.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking of big balls in Cowtown, but that's country. I don't know if anybody knows about it.
Okay, with that said, I wanted to ask AronRa, the first question out of the hat would be not pertaining to the ball, but actually something that's going on in real time. This won't take long. It should be just rather simple. Is it the Duggar family or the Dugar family or something like that? I don't watch them, but some people do. They're a very conservative family, and one of the children had molested, I think, some of the daughters and possibly some of the children outside of the context of that family, and the father didn't say anything. And if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, but I think they took that show off of the air. And yet at the same time, I think the family is starting to push back, saying, yes, we are, this moral family and we have standards and yada, yada, yada. And so what are your thoughts on that particular scene? Hello?
We have Aaron's picture still, but I don't hear his voice.
Okay. Absent AronRa's voice. Okay, we're going to wait. He was having some computer problems before the show, and so we're going to see if we can get these things ironed out. Bob, did you have anything to say concerning, is it the Duggar, Dugar, or what
I have
family?
no idea how they pronounce it, and I've never watched the show. I've just seen a few photographs of them. I mean, I can understand two things. I can understand them wanting to push back because, nobody likes being condemned or put down. But this is also the time to say nothing, so I don't think it's wise of them to be speaking up at this time. And particularly trying to claim some sort of, well, nobody is completely terrible. Nobody is completely wonderful. And so I imagine that there is no doubt a number of very wonderful things about that family. No doubt. And no doubt they, in various ways, really care about each other in spite of their conservative religion and all that. But I just think it's unwise what they're doing. However, I got to tell you, I'm not really that familiar with all of the details. And so I really can't speak to it other than just know that the son has been accused of multiple situations. And I do know this, that having worked with people with various different sexual behavioral problems in the past, when you have a person who's caught up in some sort of a dynamic that starts to own them in an addictive manner, the people who are the most conservative and religious are the most difficult to help them to think in a different way that breaks them free. There's something about their
Okay,
authoritative,
on Aux 1,
than thou religion that gets in the way. I think we have Aaron back.
Yeah, I apologize. My computer keeps dropping the connection for whatever reason. I can't tell. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
It looks like we're connected now. We were asking what your thoughts are about the Duker family.
It's okay. It's a little bothersome that you have the religious right come to the defense of these people. I mean, we have something where somebody is molesting his own sisters, and it bothers me that they don't have a problem with incest. It bothers me they don't have a problem with child molestation, but they have this huge issue with homosexuality. So if this Duggar boy were gay, then I guess he wouldn't be forgiven for anything. But because he's only molesting his baby sisters, well, then they're going to give him property and real estate with an airplane hangar and political power, and he's going to have presidential candidates come to his aid, and all of these people are going to praise this guy because his parents wouldn't choose a proper discipline, and in fact, turned to someone who was himself accused many times of sexual misconduct and abuse of other women. And so they're just going to pretend that their magic imaginary friend has forgiven him so he doesn't have to atone for anything he's done wrong.
Yeah, I haven't followed the story. Are they claiming that the behavior is a forgiven behavior? Is that what they're saying? I haven't.
Well, they're saying, yeah, it's forgiven because he pretends that his imaginary friend forgave him.
Many times this is what happens in the context of theism. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, no one has switched or anything. I thought that I was seeing the main feed up here. Okay. There was a case that I was familiar with. They brought it to me, and this pastor was just devastated. He had his son and his brother being raped, molested by his brother-in-law. And he came to me and asked me what he needed to do about it. And I said, you need to call the authorities immediately. If you don't, I will. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? We have taken him before the church over in another city, and he's been going through the casting out of demons and all of this for the last 2 weeks, and I think he's well. And I said, well, I will give you a time limit. By the time that 4:30 comes today, I said, if you haven't called, I will, because I will call the DA and the judge. I know them very well, and we're not going to play games, because I'm not interested in your children, and that is, and your brother being the guinea pig of such violence. This is something that we need to think about. Let's think about this. Your son. Your son is only, I think he was 8 or 9, and his brother was actually, I think, 14 or 15 years old. And they didn't listen to me, so I did call. And when they stood before the judge, they were reprimanded for not getting a hold of the authorities, number one. And number two, what took place was, with all this therapy that was going on in the name of Jesus, these activities continued.
Yeah.
And so they did sentence this gentleman to a certain amount of time, and then when he got out of it, he came back and he did it again, simply because the family put these individuals into harm's, these two people back into harm's way. And this is the problem that I have with it. It's no doubt that, as a parent, it's difficult to deal with, your children. Let's be honest. If your children are doing something that's not right, we don't want to make them into a criminal or anything like that. And sometimes we don't have the better judgment in cases like this. And so I can understand from a parental standpoint of saying, I'm at a loss as to what to do. And so I can sympathize with that. But yet at the same time, when you are on television and you're representing, let's say, some system of morality, whether it be through the means of secularism or, the Protestant faith that I think that they are a part of, you should do it efficiently and honestly. And so I don't think that was done in this case. I think what was done is, this young man has some problems and he gets a handful of scoldings or whatever. And I don't know all of the case, but I think that I'm probably not far off. But I think that AronRa is right. I think that they are looking at it as, sweet Jesus forgave him, and so let's just let him go back into this particular kind of context, not really understanding the complexity of that problem. And so I'm just wondering how many people have been hurt as a result of this young man since he has received the counseling and so on. And so with that said, I just wanted to get, on the table your feelings about that. And it's obvious that you want to push back on what's going on. And I really think that you're going in the right direction on that. And so
I'm a mandatory reporter in New York. And the truth is, it's not just because I'm a professor, an educator, but I'm a mandatory reporter because I think that's the right thing to be.
Yeah, it should be obvious. I mean, get some help. And, sometimes we're so close to the situation, we can't help the situation. In fact, we damage the situation. And so this is why, it's like in Ferguson, it's to expect the police department to police itself is ridiculous. The guy says, okay, Mr. Wilson, I think his name is Wilson, Darren Wilson, here's my keys. Here are my keys. We don't need the evidence. We don't need the gun that shot the individual. You just go to the police station, clean yourself up, do whatever you want to, and whenever you want to, you can turn in whatever you have. These scientists who should be on the scene collecting the evidence, because they know how to collect evidence. Most of these officers don't know anything about the collecting of any evidence.
Did you see this report that came out the other day that some groups are actually paying attention to police shootings, and they have discovered that as they're paying attention to police shootings that have taken place, that the FBI statistics they believe demonstrate that half of the police shootings don't get reported to the FBI for statistical analysis. Half of them.
Yeah.
You don't get me started on the cops, because what bothers me about this is we've seen every 2 weeks at a minimum, we see somebody that's being wrongfully shot or killed in some other way by cops that have no accountability, and usually race related. And these stories are so frequent that they are really annoying me. Why we don't have a national amount of attention, legislative attention to these kind of atrocities. This is just bizarre. I mean, I saw a video recently where they're talking about doing this open carry thing in Texas. So you have this guy walking down the street wearing an AR-15. He's a white guy. So the police, one car comes up and asks him, why is he carrying an AR-15? He says, I'm just exercising my rights. Okay, fine. He goes about his day. He refuses to give an ID or anything to the cop, and the cop just lets him go, talks to him politely and leaves. Black guy walking down the street wearing an AR-15. Same exact situation. Suddenly has 5 police cars pull up. He's forced to the ground at gunpoint. They take away his gun and put him on cuffs and carry him away. And then you get a 7-month-old pregnant woman, again, a 7-month pregnant woman who's, again, black, and she's forced down on the ground. And even though she's pregnant at the same time, this is ridiculous. We're seeing this all the time. I've already done one podcast about this, and I intend to do more, because this is really irritating me that we don't have national attention for this kind of thing when it's this frequent. How often do we have to see the same story repeated again and again before somebody does something about it?
Keep preaching, AronRa. Yeah. That's good preaching.
We had a local police officer who confessed. He said that in his career, he retired that he said that he thinks that 60% of police officers are fine, upstanding people, but 40%, he said, are thugs.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was recently in England, and one of our hosts, or one of our guides through London, was a Bobby. And this guy told me that when he was training for his position, that they sent him to Southern California for whatever reason, and he's riding with Southern California police cars. And these police officers, he said, greatly disturbed him because of their overt racism and their violent nature. So, and I want to mention something else that was brought up a minute ago. You said that somebody had come to you and said that they had taken care of the situation because they had brought their boy to some priest or whatever who was casting out demons.
That's
true. I obviously would have a slightly different response to this. First of all, I mean, George Carlin said that he had as much authority on the matters of which the Pope speaks as does the Pope, but nobody gives him as much credit for that. And the fact is that he's right, because when you talk about clergy are not trained psychologists or sociologists in most cases. They just have their position because their church gives them this position. And so they act on this without any authority or training or knowledge of what the hell it is that they're supposed to be doing. So when somebody tells you that they're bringing their kid to the priest, they may as well just be going out to a man on the street, because they're turning the situation over to somebody who has absolutely no expertise, except perhaps in a rare instance where he might have some practical experience of having done the wrong thing before. But then when they start talking about demons, it's time to get them focus in their eyes and say, there's no such thing as demons. This is real world now. And real things are happening, and this is how you have to deal with that.
I agree with you. By the way, and for the record, have you ever watched Dark Shadows?
I did, yes.
Okay. You said perhaps just like Barnabas Collins. That was awesome. I mean, when you were on that rant, you said perhaps. That was good. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about the ball. Here we go. It's rather simple. It's not difficult, but let me see if I can do some prepping. And I so want people to try to understand. So many times in a conversation, everyone is, they will hear one or two words and they will just get really, really, let's call it hard shell. Here in the South, we have hard shell Baptists, and so that means that's a Baptist that you can't talk to. In other words, they're like an alligator. They're all mouth and no ears. And so a hard-shell Baptist, I don't care what you say to them. I don't care what kind of usage that you utilize in the conversation. They're not going to listen to you because words to them only mean what they want them to mean. And so hopefully tonight, we're not going to be hard-shell Baptists or hard-shell anything. We want to be extremely flexible. We want to, just take a breath and enjoy the evening and learn how to enjoy the conversation. And so here we go. We're talking about the ball. I'm going to pick up the biggest one because everyone understands what a ball looks like. But when I think about this ball, I am taken back to something that I said a few weeks ago because I understand that theism, and I'm a multi-axial theist here, and I understand that my theism is dogmatic. I am more than willing to say that all of my theism is dogmatic. And what I mean by that, I am saying and putting on record that I have nothing that is a theist that is compelling to anyone. I have absolutely nothing. I like what Bob Greaves said, that is, when he actually put together some things concerning what Dr. John Shook was saying about Huxley. And I'm going to quote this, and this comes from the God Debates. Huxley applies dogmatism to any overreaching philosophy, according to John Shook. And so John Shook's argument was that Huxley was applying dogmatism, if you will, to any overreaching philosophy. Now tonight what I'd like to do, I would like to say, let's take philosophy and let's take science and let's pretend like we have this continuum. Some people like to separate it, but just for the sake of chat, let's just pretend like we have this continuum. Would that be fine with you, AronRa?
Go ahead.
Okay, now, here we go. When I listen to what's out there, and it does disturb me a bit, when I listen to Richard Dawkins, he states all of this rhetoric, and then he says, pushed away from the agnostic position and towards atheism. And so in the context that he used that, and I can read that, I'd be more than happy to, because what he is stating is that atheism, in a sense, is a position. And so I understand the idea of lack of belief. I understand the idea of unbelief. And so I don't think that I'm foreign to that. I don't think that other people are foreign to what it means to believe and not believe and all of that. But I'm here to talk about atheism and theism, in a sense, are both dogmatic. And here's what I'm saying about dogmatism in this context. If I say that I make an assertion, in other words, if I asserted something and I didn't have any support, that wouldn't be good. And so if I keep making these claims and I don't have evidence, I don't have any support, I'm simply saying that in a sense, that's a form, if you will, of dogmatism. I like what Liddell and Scott stated, and I'm going to take this because they take this from some of the Greek manuscripts written before the first century and during the first century. And this is the Greek word dogma, which has been translated into our English word. And they write and record, and both of these guys are lexical theorists. And so they seem to think that it's, someone who seems, that which seems to one, that is an opinion. In other words, if you have an opinion, whether it's an opinion that says, I believe, or whether it's an opinion that says, no, I don't believe. Well, either one in the context of which these lexical theorists are working, they're simply saying that that's, in a sense, an opinion or posturing or possibly a position taken. And so when I look at what's being stated, that is, in the landscape of what's going on, I see all kinds of things. For instance, let me place Richard Dawkins back in context of what I stated concerning pushed away from the agnostic position and towards atheism. He states this, he said, I suspect the reason is that most people have a residue of feeling that Darwinian evolution isn't quite big enough to explain everything about life. He goes on and says, all I can say as a biologist is that the feeling disappears progressively the more that you read about and study what is known about life and evolution. I want to add one thing more. The more you understand the significance of evolution, the more you are pushed away from the agnostic position towards atheism. And so it's in that kind of context that he spins, this changing from one position to another. Would you agree with what he stated, AronRa?
Well, no, because I use a different interpretation. I understand that Huxley wanted there to be some kind of a middle ground, and that while I consider myself in many ways a bulldog, of a next generation or of a subsequent generation to Huxley, and I greatly admire some of the things that Huxley did and said. We do have this disagreement on the idea of agnosticism, and I understand where he's coming from. He didn't like the atheists of his day. And I admit, the atheists of my day are a problem too. A lot of us, quite frankly, are assholes, and we're quite blunt. However, what I state about atheism is that a belief is a conviction, and a lack of belief is a lack of conviction. Would you accept that?
I wouldn't, but
You would not, or you would?
I would not.
Okay, why?
That when you lack one conviction, you don't just have a negative absence of conviction. There's a conviction in rejecting the other conviction.
Okay, then let me give you this analogy then. Dr. Jones, when your friend comes to you and says that they've taken the person that you had mentioned before, they've taken it to this priest to exorcise these demons. Do you believe there were demons?
Do I believe that there were actually demons? Hell no.
Right. Okay. Do you consider the possibility that there are demons?
It's kind of like this. If I say to you, do we have any evidence textually of demons? No. Do we have any evidence that is in this natural world? That is through all of the scientific methods that we do have. Do we have any evidence? I would say no. Okay. But I can't, but at the end of the day, I would say, is it possible for there to be a demon? I would have to, in a sense, take an agnostic position. I don't know.
Okay, well, see, that's a misappropriation about the agnostic. Okay, yeah, you don't know if there's a demon, but then this is true of anything. I mean, when you have degrees of conviction, okay? If you're not convinced that, your friend is talking, when he tells you that he's taken his son to this priest and they've exorcised demons, you either accept that there were demons or you don't. Now, you can think that your friend is lying. You can think that your friend is crazy. You can think that your friend is himself innocently deceived, but it doesn't matter what the explanation is. There is even the possibility remotely, and this is not a possibility in my realm, but perhaps it is in your mindset, that there could really be demons, but there's no evidence implying that there should be, or giving you reason to believe that. So you're not convinced there are demons. You don't have to take a knowledge position over whether your friend is lying or crazy or deceived or what have you. You just don't believe. It's not that you believe there's no demons. You don't believe there are demons.
Okay.
You don't eliminate the possibility that there could be demons, but there's no realistic way, or there's no way to take seriously the claim that there are demons.
Okay. I understand your perspective of what you're saying. Now, what I'd like to do for the sake of tonight's show is to talk about the ball, and maybe we can go back to that. Okay. And so if we can just stay in the context of this issue of the ball, I think that it can make everything simple, because one of the ambitions that I have in life is to make things extremely simple. And so here we go. And I wanted to quote Richard Dawkins again. He said, if children understand that belief should be substantiated with evidence, as opposed to tradition, authority, revelation, or faith, they will automatically work out for themselves that they are atheist. And so I'm simply making these quotes known early on because I don't think that Richard Dawkins in these little snippets, that is in what he's saying, I don't think that he's practicing what science is intended to be. And I think that he's practicing something way outside of the idea of science. And I will share with you my concerns after we deal with the ball. Now, here we go. Okay. I'm going to give you two analogies. And these are simply stories, okay? And we're dealing with balls that you can get at Walmart. They're not special balls. I didn't pray and get them from Sweet Jesus. And Sky Daddy didn't have anything to do with it. This is a 2-pound ball. Behind me is an 8-pound ball. It's a little bit heavier. And then I have the bigger balls. So we can use any of the balls. But my point is, for bringing 3 balls tonight has to do with, I don't care how large the ball is or how small the ball is. My point is it should be simple. And here it goes. Let's say that everything natural is the ball. Can you go with that? Just okay. So let's say that this ball, everything natural is the ball. But I can't say, because I don't know, I can't say that I can, place that into this kind of context. Everything natural is the ball, therefore the ball is everything natural. Does that make sense to you?
If you just said that the ball is everything natural, then everything natural is the ball, yeah.
Okay, I'm simply saying that it's not a convertible proposition. A lot of people will say, and this is where I think that theists really get into a lot of trouble. They want to say, God is love, God is love. And then you can ask them, is love God? And they will say no. And so it's not a convertible proposition to them. And so I'm simply saying that this is not, in a sense, a convertible proposition. Everything natural is the ball, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything pertaining to the ball is natural. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. So regarding what I think it was Bob said earlier about, he did some disassociation between a conviction and a belief, right? That you had to have a positive belief one way or another, even regarding the thing about your friend's demons. Bob, would you reconsider that answer, or is that still your position?
I'm not clear on what you're asking, but
but I think if we go into that, we're going to get sidetracked about my questions concerning the ball.
We'll get back to it.
Yeah, let's get back to that. Let's talk about the ball.
Okay.
So we're talking about
there. To just clarify, as you're talking about set logic, that if everything in A is also in set B, that doesn't mean that everything in set B is also in A.
There you go.
Right.
So everything natural is the ball. Agree?
Everything natural equals the ball.
It just is the ball. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything that the ball is everything natural. It could be something else more than just everything natural.
Okay.
Okay? Are we good so far?
Well, I'm thinking about the analogy being that the ball encompasses our sphere of understanding, and that everything that is within the ball is that which we can know, or maybe you're talking about something else.
I'm simply saying I don't know that the ball is anything but everything natural at this point in time. Would you agree with that? Okay. So let's call the ball, just for the sake of simplicity. Everything that the ball is, according to my understanding right now, it's everything natural is the ball. That's the bottom line. Okay. Now, if the ball doesn't have any windows, it doesn't have any doors, it doesn't have any holes. In other words, whatever's inside of the ball doesn't have available, let's call it data, information, We don't have available facts. We don't have anything to be able to say whether this or that is true or false. We just have nothing available. And so,
So if I then make assertions about what is outside the ball or
Okay.
other than the ball, and I state them as fact, am I being dishonest?
my point is,
Okay.
if the only logic system that I have is built upon inside the ball logic, in other words, everything natural is the ball, and I
Okay.
have an everything natural is the ball logic. That's the kind of logic that I have.
Okay.
What kind of science do I have? I have an everything is the ball science. That's all I have. That's all I know. And so I'm working with a model, if you will. Everything is the ball, science, logic, everything that I'm working with is in that context. And so I have no availability, that is, for evidence, for facts. I have no methodology that actually can get outside of this ball. So I don't know whether there is something outside of the ball or whether there isn't anything outside of the ball. I'm clueless. Okay, I'm in the dark, if you will, to make it simple. And so here's the question, and I'm going to use another little story to make it real simple. Let's say that AronRa was teaching algebra, and you're more than qualified to teach algebra. If you were teaching algebra to some students, and you wrote on the marker board, or let's say chalkboard, let's go back in time. Boy, they make all kinds of noise, don't they? And so we wrote, actually you wrote on the board, A plus B equals C. Little Johnny is sitting on the front row and he's smiling. And so you said to little Johnny, what do you think A is? And little Johnny said, I believe that A is 6. And you saw that little Susie was wanting to say something too, and you said, little Susie, do you have something to say? And she said, yes, I don't believe that A is 6. And so should the teacher just sit back and say, well, it's good to really, jump out there, leap out there when you have nothing to work with to assert a belief or even an unbelief? In other words, is it good to take a position of belief or unbelief that is in the context of A plus B equals C? Or would a good algebra teacher like yourself say, listen, it's better to say, I would rather give you an understanding of how algebra works, little Johnny and little Susie. We don't want to jump to conclusions. We don't want to take a position. We want to leave it alone. And we're just going to be, in a sense, agnostic. So we take an agnostic position. We just don't know what that means. We don't have enough data available, correct?
Mm-hmm. But do you understand that? Well, okay. Go ahead.
So in this context, would unbelief be, in a sense, something that's not good to take, that is, little Susie's position?
Little Susie is more justified than the other person because given sheer probabilities, you have the infinite range of numbers that A could be versus the ridiculous probability without knowing B or C that he's just going to jump out there and make an assertion unsupported that he knows what it is. It not only requires an impossible mathematical aptitude based on no information, but it is just an empty assertion. It's blind.
Okay,
So it's not supported by anything.
let's pretend for the sake of argument it was like the God argument. It was either he exists or he doesn't. Suppose
Well-
that it could be 6 or it may not be 6.
Well,
It's
I need
one
to-
or
I
the
need to
other.
specify
And so
something here.
it's 50-50. And I'm trying to make it real simple. And I think when we try to understand something this simple, it should not be over these little picky points, because I think that it should be obvious that a good algebra teacher will say, little Johnny, little Susie, don't commit to a position. It's not good in algebra to commit to belief
But the
or
problem is-
unbelief when you have nothing.
Right, and I would agree with you on that. But the problem that I have is you're using the word agnostic in a way that it doesn't apply. And even Huxley knew that. Huxley said, without any data, you can't know. Okay, that's fine. But the problem is he's using agnostic, which is the negation of without Gnosticism. And Gnosticism was the assertion that whatever you believe is what you know. They profess that, just because they believe it and they express great conviction, they would say, like, as the modern preachers do now, oh, I don't just believe it, I know it. But as I often say, if you can't show it, then you don't know it, because knowledge is justified belief. In other words, you can test it with measurable accuracy. And when you're talking about agnosticism, you're talking about that there is no way for a human being, for a mortal man, to have any kind of evidence for anything supernatural. So the nature of supernatural things, the nature of God, will always be outside of our grasp. It is not possible for us to know anything about the nature of God. And it creates four categories. Now, you can have people who say, as Eric Hovind often does, that I know that there's a God and I can tell you who he is and what book he wrote and all of this. And he will profess to know all kinds of things that he doesn't really know. It's like, as Professor Peter Boghossian says, faith is pretending to know what you don't know. And then you'll have an agnostic theist who says, well, I believe there's a God, but who's to say, man, like, who that God is or what his book is, so he believes, but he realizes the possibility that it's not possible to know the properties of God. And then you have the agnostic atheist, which is the dominant of all of us, because we all want to be reasonable people. The agnostic atheist is the one to say, well, they admit that it's not possible to know, but they don't have any reason to believe. Knowledge and belief are two very distinct things. And then I'm in the rare category where I used to be an agnostic atheist like most of the others. I'm now in the Gnostic atheist position. It's not that I assert that whatever I believe is knowledge, but that I can make a knowledge claim based on logic and based on the rules of science. Science only considers that there is that which is supported by evidence, what is not supported by evidence, and what is not supported by evidence does not warrant serious consideration. The two edicts that I go by are from Sagan and Hitchens. Sagan said that positive claims require positive evidence, and Hitchens added that that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
But that only works with inside the ball. In other words, what Hitchens is talking about is everything natural inside the ball logic. That works inside the ball, but when it comes outside of the ball, whatever is said or whatever there is or isn't there really doesn't apply to what Christopher Hitchens is actually articulating. And see, that's my point. My point is,
science. It only works in science.
yeah, it only works with everything natural is the ball kind of science in this analogy. So what you're dealing with is you're taking a leap of faith and taking. Christopher Hitchens, just a minute. Yes, you are taking a leap of faith and taking Christopher Hitchens and applying something outside of the ball that's not. That's what you've done, and that is not science there. No.
The laws of logic here. If somebody is going to assert something without
okay,
evidence,
but you're talking about the laws of logic that are within the scope of what we're talking about here. We're talking about everything natural is the ball.
Right, we're talking about the claims people make of unsupported claims about what is outside the ball. And so I'm rejecting those claims because the claims of people make within the ball about what is outside the ball, they're making without any evidence. And I am rejecting the claims that are made by the people within the ball about what might exist outside the ball, especially when they assert knowledge of things they can't possibly know.
Okay, AronRa.
So why are you reacting to them? Because you don't know anything more than they do.
That's one of the reasons that I loved somebody actually called me a militant agnostic once upon a time, or a dogmatic agnostic. I actually had a web page, I think it's still up, called Dogmatic Agnostic. But I thought it was too funny when somebody accused me of being a dogmatic agnostic, because it's an oxymoron. It's not possible to be a dogmatic agnostic.
I think I am a dogmatic agnostic, and that I don't know, and I believe that knowing is not possible. I'm rather firm in that, so I'm kind of a dogmatic agnostic.
I like the bumper sticker for militant agnostic, which is the one that says, "I don't know and you don't either."
That's good.
Okay,
I like that.
I guess my point is, I don't know anything. I don't even know everything natural is the ball. I don't know everything in this context. And I would have to argue that when we don't have anything available, if you don't have available facts, if you don't have available information, how can you even, put together a methodology? How can you put together anything sensible that would suggest that a claim or an unbelief is anything outside of something that we should not be speaking about? In other words, when a theist makes a claim, why wouldn't we just simply say, you don't know, and I don't know. End of story. It shouldn't be, let me take a position of, I don't believe you.
How about, why not? Why not?
Well,
When
it's
somebody makes
the
claims-
thing that Susie's doing. I don't think that good algebra teachers teach their students to say, no, I don't believe it's 6. She doesn't have justification for saying, I don't believe that it's 6. Now, you're saying, well, statistically, it might turn out that way, but that's not the games that we play when we're trying to teach children mathematics. We're not trying to teach, oh, this is what you need to believe or not believe. No, we're trying to give people an understanding of how this works. And when you have A plus B equals C, what you do is you take the position of, I don't know. I don't have enough, what? Available
I need to know what B
data.
and C are before I can solve for A.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to.
And so I have to say, I don't know, and I need to teach my children, my grandchildren, and everyone else. I don't know. That's simple.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm arguing that the agnostic position is the rational position, not
But
theism or atheism. Theism and
But you don't-
atheism, that is in how they posture. That is as positions, as Dawkins is continuing to push this. If you leave this position to go for another position, I'm talking about positions tonight. Now, whether a
so
person
what
lacks
you're-
belief
what
or
you're
not, and
trying
if
to
you're an
do-
atheist, I'm not pushing back on that. I'm simply saying the willingness to take these positions, and I think in a sense they are ridiculous and they are reckless. And what we're doing is we're having this debate with something that we know absolutely nothing about.
and cannot reasonably draw a middle line between this. You either believe the unsupported assertion of somebody claiming knowledge of what is outside the ball, or you don't. Now, if you're not convinced that the claims that are being presented to you are correct, then you are in the atheist position. There, I want you to make sure that I'm very clear about this.
See, I don't
You are
agree
either
with what you've said so
convinced-
far.
You are either convinced or you are not convinced. There is no possible middle road there. There's no, you are convinced or not. That's it. It's a dichotomy.
I'm convinced that I can say when it comes to A plus B equals C, I don't know. I don't have to take the position of unbelief or
Granted,
belief.
you don't know.
I don't know. So I'm not going to take the position of unbelief or belief, because whatever
We're
someone says
confusing-
about A, B, or C, I'm simply not going to take a position of
but
belief
there's
or
not-
unbelief. I'm going to continue to take a position of being agnostic. I don't
You're-
know. I don't know. I don't know. I
Right, you
don't know,
don't
little
know,
Susie,
but
little
you
Johnny.
believe.
I don't know.
Right. Belief and knowledge are different things. Agnosticism addresses
This is true.
what you can know. And atheism and theism are questions of what you believe. And what you believe is not what you know. And what you know is not necessarily what you believe. Okay? These are like belief or knowledge is a subset of belief, but it's justified. It's something that you can verify. So when we're talking about belief, we're talking about not necessarily verified. Okay, so you don't know. Whatever you believe is something that you don't know. Whether you believe it or whether you don't believe it is unrelated to whether you know it or not.
I have a little ball in my hand. It's simple. It's not complex. There's either something on the outside of the ball or there isn't. And I don't know. And I'm not willing to take a position of saying, oh, I believe there is something outside of the ball. And I'm not willing to take the position of saying, no, I don't believe that there is anything outside of the ball.
It's
I just don't know.
It's irrelevant. Okay? It is irrelevant what you believe or what you know. So you and I are both within the ball. Maybe we agree that it's not possible to know what's outside the ball. But the person you're talking to believes there might be something and then starts stating what he thinks that is. Well, that's fine. You believe there might be that. Neither of us No, we both agree that we don't know, which means we're both agnostic. This one's a theist and you're an atheist, but you're both agnostic. Now, if you're talking to somebody who professes to know what is outside that ball, or somebody who professes that there is no outside that ball and that they can prove this, well, then this is an agnostic position again. But it's not the same thing as belief versus knowledge. You're confusing.
Who was talking about belief versus knowledge? Who was talking about belief versus knowledge?
He is. But wait, actually, he's confusing the two. That's the problem.
I didn't hear him talk about both of them.
He's saying that when somebody makes an unsupported claim about something that they can't possibly know, right? I'm saying that in the example that he gave, where somebody makes an unsupported assertion that he knows, he believes that that A is 6. He doesn't have for B or C. How could he possibly know A? The only thing that we've got to go on, unless he knows some trick that we're not aware of, and how could there be? Then he's got an infinite probability against him. One in infinity odds.
Okay, but here's the problem.
Not good odds.
Okay, here's the problem. We're in an algebra class, and that's easy to say, I don't know. But when it should be much easier to say, well, if everything is natural, is the ball, and
So
there
in your
are no
algebra
doors and there are no windows, and I can't look outside, I have nothing available, why should I why should I take a position? Let me ask you that question. Why should you take a position on what's outside of the ball or not outside of the ball?
Okay.
Whether something exists or doesn't exist. Why should that conversation be the great debate? It doesn't make sense to me. We have absolutely nothing, and it's become the greatest debate of all time. I don't get it. There's nothing available to any of us. It doesn't make sense. We are in this ball. It's a little one. Let me get the big one. It's a big one.
So you have two kids that see A plus B equals C on the wall. Both of them admit that neither of them knows. One believes that A may be 6. He doesn't know, but he believes it. Now, the other girl doesn't know either, but she knows that statistical probabilities are way against this guy, and she also knows that logically, since they are both within the ball, that logically he can't assert with no other figures for any of the other variables. He cannot possibly assert that that is the answer, not unless he meets that 1 versus infinity probability. So she's perfectly justified in saying that she does not believe that it is 6, because the odds are it's not. Neither of them knows. One believes without justification, and the other one disbelieves with justification.
Dr. Jones, did you say that she doesn't believe it is 6, or that she believes it is not 6?
What difference does it make?
Oh, there's a big difference.
Okay,
in that.
this is, I mean, the little girl in the classroom is simply saying, I don't believe that it's 6.
Okay.
And
Because
so,
he has no justification for his claim. So she's perfectly justified in doubting the veracity of his claim. He has no justification for it. That's good enough for her.
okay, should the algebra teacher, and this is just a curiosity question, would you encourage little Susie to take that position, or would you tell her, hey, listen, the position to take is, I don't know. And tell
Again,
little Johnny, he needs to take the position of I don't know.
We have to figure out something about epistemology. And the first thing that I would be talking to both of these kids about, and she already knows by justification of her answer, that she already suspects, and she's already going to be on my side in this lesson, that we can't know what A is if we don't know what B or C are. We need to know one or the other.
I think that you're assuming a lot out of that little girl, to be honest with you. I mean, she could just, be upset with little Johnny. She could be just as dogmatic as little Johnny is.
Why is Johnny dogmatic? Is he going by something that was given down as an
I'm simply making the statement that, I don't care what size your dogma is. It could be something real simple. It could be simply an assertion without any support. So do either of them have any support for their belief or unbelief?
Okay. As I understand it, a dogma is something that is, is a principle that is laid down by authority. Okay, so this
Okay,
is something you were
I read
told.
you earlier, my usage and what I
Okay.
wanted to go along with, and you can change that, and we can talk about your ball experiment here
All right,
if
as I
you'd like.
understand, a dogma is a belief or principle that is laid down by an authority, and you're supposed to follow that because it came from an authority.
That's not what I'm
That's
talking
One of
about.
that's one of the
Okay, that's
definitions
not what I'm
people use.
talking about tonight. I'm
What
not
is yours?
using that particular usage at all.
Okay, what is yours?
Okay. Let's go back to this. I read this. It's real simple. This is something taken before the first century, used during the first century, and has been used diachronically many times. Liddell and Scott really picked up on it. We can look at books like by Dr. Bauer, Gingrich, and Danker, and so many other lexical theorists that speak in the same kind of way concerning how many people throughout the centuries have used this particular word that is in Greek that has been transliterated into English. And so if a person simply took and had an opinion concerning something, that was a dogma, regardless of whether
In
they...
German, that's what the word dogma means, is
Yeah,
opinion.
and so if I took, if my opinion was, or I took a position, or I was just trying to say, no, I don't agree with little Johnny, that's just as much a dogma as anything
Okay.
else that is within that context of usage. And
Right.
so
Then-
I'm talking about my usage, not, what someone wants to do when they want to run for, some political thing, trying to push people, in herd instinct. And see, that this is the thing I really have a problem with, because we have four horsemen who are trying to take, in a sense, and push dogmatics, because I'd like, and I'm going to do this over the next few weeks, I'm going to actually go through a lot of the stuff that's being articulated by these people and demonstrate how they are speaking way outside of the context of science, and they are, in a sense, attempting to speak mythologically to people, and they are spinning very much a dogma.
Okay. So the word dogma has been negated to whatever just your opinion is. And so.
No, it's
that-
not been
that-
negated. It's simply dealing with usage, how people before you and me have used the term.
Okay.
And it was very meaningful to people in debate, and at Mars Hill, it was used in that kind of context.
Okay.
And so we're talking about, people who have dealt with philosophy for many, many
Okay.
years. And so we're not going to get stuck just in the modern world and say, oh, yes, we have it, and we have everything that's ever been thought of. No, we're going to say, we have to look at usage. And so if it's only remotely true that atheism is dogmatic, I want to explore that.
Okay, well, it's not remotely true unless you negate the definition so that dogma only means an opinion such that it applies to everybody. And so therefore, dogma no longer has a meaning.
Is it
Apart
possible
from
it's
opinion.
polysemous?
There's a reason that I object to dogma, and it's because it is not the definition that Dr. Jones has given. It's because it's following something that's given by an authority. And if I may, because I want to flesh this out.
But what you're doing is you're saying, I don't want to go along with your usage. And so linguistically, that is scientifically speaking, that is, we're dealing with a linguistic model and we're trying to explore it. You're not willing to do that. What you're wanting
No,
to do
I
is to
didn't say that at
recreate it,
all.
and you're wanting to go down a different
No, I
street
didn't say that at
in
all.
order to push something. Go for it.
No, I did not say that at all. I said the reason that I object to dogma is because of the standard definition currently in use in English. Now, at some other point in German, perhaps it meant something that I wouldn't object to, but in English, as I understand it, fighting against dogmatic people and dogmatic beliefs put down by authority and versus like all evidence, then yeah, I object to that, because
I
I'm talking
object.
about people,
I
when they
agree.
follow dogma,
Good.
they will
Good.
believe
Sure.
when the book says that you're the first person to ever set foot on this beach, and you look down and you see footprints of Nike shoes, and you don't have Nike
I
shoes,
agree.
then if you follow dogma, then you're going to still believe that you're the first person on that beach, even though the evidence proves otherwise.
I agree.
Now, given the two kids in the room with the experiment,
Hey,
the boy-
let me stop you just for a minute, because I agree with your fight against dogma in this context.
okay,
Okay?
okay.
Don't
So-
get put out with me, because I'm very much for you, but I want to make myself clear, and I want to be simple, that is to our viewers, because so many times we're talking past each other, and so many times in the conversation, we're not willing to stay with someone else's usage. And,
Okay.
and I
So
think
it-
this
Dr.
is the
Jones,
reason
can
that
I- can I,
the conversation
offer
gets
something here as
confusing.
well?
Yes, go for it.
I think that the vast majority of people in the English speaking world don't really pay attention to the so-called great debate between believers and non-believers. And as a result, I really think it's believers and non-believers that are engaged in this debate who are more the people who actually use the word dogma in that sense. And I'm not so convinced that the average, say, American or Canadian or even British person thinks of the word as necessarily, that oh, that's just the only way we use it. But I think that people engaged in that debate often are people who only ever use the word in that way, and so they might be, based on the fact that that's the only circles they kind of travel in, they might be of that opinion that that's the only way that the modern word is actually used.
Well, that is the only definition that comes up when I look it up. So it does
Really?
not say, yeah, when I look up the word dogma, I do not get that it's any old opinion you want. No,
I
it
looked
is.
it up
It
and
is
I found 4 definitions. That was one of them,
okay. Well, I only get one. When I type in dogma and definition in Google, I get one
Right.
definition only.
Yeah. Well,
And it's the one that I,
they're giving you probably the most popular.
Books like these
right.
are
But
useful.
they don't give me any alternate choices. So it would imply that there's not an alternate choice. I only get one.
Oh, I wouldn't
So
go along with that then.
anyway,
Yeah. So
yeah,
stop
see,
using
I
Google
will,
Dictionary.
okay,
It's
okay,
a little
fine.
too- yeah.
And I can see that there are times
Yeah.
when I will look up in a dictionary and I will find that the dictionary definition is wrong. For example, spontaneous generation, abiogenesis, look up either of these words and they will be linked together because all the dictionaries, except for science books and Wikipedia, all think that spontaneous generation and abiogenesis are the same thing. These definitions are wrong, and they've written to the dictionaries, 3 of the dictionaries, to correct this with scientific backing. They refuse to correct it because this is a common understanding of the layman. You will never get an accurate definition from a common layman dictionary. Same thing with animal. If you look up animal, any dictionary, they're going to get it wrong. They're going to start talking about how you can have single-celled animals. That's not correct by a biological definition. It is not possible to have a single-celled animal. Multicellular is part of the definition of animal. There are times when the dictionary is wrong, and when the dictionary is wrong, you've got alternate sources that will show what the correct definition is.
Oh, now,
But-
can you recognize there's a difference between a correctly way of understanding and organizing the world and the incorrect way of organizing the world that is most commonly done? And
Okay,
so
so-
dictionaries try to define words not based on what they ought to mean, but the way people use them. So if people use abiogenesis and spontaneous, if they use them both as if they were similar and are identical, if people do that, well, then that's what they do.
Well, then
even if they shouldn't.
that's what they do
Right.
wrong because
Right,
they're
right.
wrong, and we can prove that they're wrong.
Yeah,
So they should
but
stop
the
doing
dictionary
that.
might be right in saying that they
Okay.
they use it that way.
All right. So
Yeah.
what has happened here in this little thought experiment, and I still haven't gotten to the point of fleshing out the epistemology on this, which I don't think I'll ever get there, but the idea is that Dr. Jones wants to show that atheism is dogmatic. Well, atheism is only dogmatic if dogma doesn't mean dogma. If dogma means opinion, then atheism is an opinion. And what kind of an opinion? It's not really qualified as an opinion. It really isn't. And I'll give you this explanation when I flesh out the 2 kids in the room. So we have a boy and the girl. The boy thinks that A is 6, and the girl looks at him with a raised eyebrow and says, I don't think it's 6. And why does she say that? She has full justification, not just of statistics, but also because the boy's making an empty assertion of knowledge he can't possibly know about. She knows that. She knows it without knowing B or C, that it's not possible to know A. She's right. She's correct in that.
I say the little girl can't
Mhm.
be mathematically correct if she's reacting to the boy, because what A is has nothing to do with whether the boy thinks it's this or thinks it's that or doesn't think anything at all.
Mhm.
Her opinion about A should be totally independent of.
Well, maybe
this.
I'm
Yeah.
maybe I'm misinterpreting the way that Dr. Jones is presenting this. And given the example that he gave, if the boy says, without knowing what B or C is, if he says, I believe that it's 6, she knows, in my understanding, that he's unjustified in making that assertion because he can't possibly deduce that. Now, of course, the lesson that I would give immediately following that is that the only way to have any understanding of what A is if we also understand either B or C, and then we can do the math to figure the other one out. But if we don't have either of these two variables, it's impossible to know. So you can just assert all you want to, but you've got no justification for that assertion. And she knows that he has no justification for his assertion, and that statistically he's wrong.
Okay. See, one thing that I can say, and I completely agree with this point, when it comes to this ball, if we will use it analogous to the illustration that I was trying to make with little Johnny and little Susie, if we have everything natural is the ball, and if we have no windows, if we have no doors, we have no holes, we have no way of looking outside of this, we don't even know if there is anything outside, whether something is or isn't outside of the ball. And this is not even getting close to whether there is a God or not. We're just talking about whether there is something outside of this ball. And so if someone says, oh, I believe that there is something outside of the ball, they have no justification for that belief. If someone says, I don't believe that there's anything outside of the ball, they don't have any justification for that belief either. And so in both cases, both have no justification for belief, that is taking the position of belief or taking the position, namely, of unbelief. And so the best position to take in this context would be the position of being agnostic. It's that simple. I was simply using the illustration of algebra in the context of trying to say this is analogous of what I'm attempting to say. And I'm trying to just keep this real simple.
Okay, so keep it really simple. You're using this ball as the sphere of understanding, of perceptible reality. This is our sphere of perceptible reality. We can't possibly know what's beyond that. Let's say that there's two people inside this sphere of reality, neither of which knows that there even is a sphere of reality. We don't know that there, not only what the limits are, we don't know that limits exist. We don't know if there is an outside of the sphere of reality. We don't know the size of this ball. It may be infinite for all we know. Now, one person is asserting that they believe something for which they have absolutely no justification. And the other person is simply responding to the fact that this assertion has no justification. Since you have no data, you can't possibly know what is outside of the sphere or that A equals 6. The claim is unjustified. The belief is without reason. Now, if you want to tell me what you believe, fine. I would rather you say, I believe X because Y. But if you just tell me I believe X and that's it, I really don't care. Okay. I don't care what you believe. All that matters is why you believe it. So give me a reason. If you can't give me a reason, then we're done. The conversation's over with. You have given me no substance and nothing to consider.
See, maybe I'm not being understood, and let me just say it again. We have this ball.
Is it my density that is the problem?
No, I'm just trying to make it really clear, to make sure that we're on the same page and we're agreeing with whatever we are agreeing with and disagreeing with whatever we're disagreeing with. I just want to make it simple.
The ball represents our sphere of perceptible reality, right?
In other words, whatever you would call, let's use words that people typically use. Some people say, oh, everything is natural, and some people say there is no supernatural, correct?
Right.
Okay. Let's change the word supernatural into, everything is natural, and there is nothing that's not natural.
Okay.
Okay? And so everything that is natural is the ball.
Okay.
But, I don't have any way, if the ball is everything that is natural, I don't have any way, I don't have anything available, nothing. I have nothing, absolutely nothing.
Right.
No available evidence. I have no available facts. I have nothing available to me to where I could even suggest what is likely, what is this or that. I have absolutely nothing. And so when someone just comes by and says, oh, I believe there is something, And if I say, how can you believe there is something that you don't have any justification for that belief?
Okay.
Now, I'm simply saying the better position or the rational decision to take would be to say,
non-belief.
I don't know if there's
Right, and
something
there-
outside
would
of
be-
this ball.
and
I
of
just
course,
don't know. Now,
of
when I
course,
say
not only-
I don't believe, that's going a little bit further than saying
Why?
I don't know.
No, it's not going as far. It's not going as far. It's to say that you don't know. Okay, that's something different than saying you don't believe. When somebody makes an assertion of what is outside of what is possible to know, you don't have to be convinced that they're right. You can not believe. And that possibility still exists because neither of you know what's outside of the sphere of reality, but somebody believes something and somebody else doesn't. This is not a position because
Aaron seems to be bracketing the concept of not a negation here differently than the way you're using it, Dr. Jones, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Let's turn the
and
thing
I'm also
around.
confused about something else here because you said at first that atheism is dogmatic, right? Well, obviously I'm going to take huge offense to that because I am so anti-dogmatic. And you also admitted in the early part of the show that your position is dogmatic. And you used then the same definition that I do always. So at some point, the definition seems to have changed because you're not telling me that you believe what you believe just because it's an opinion and that I don't believe what I don't believe because it's just because an opinion, and that you admit that yours is dogmatic. Well, you're only admitting that that's your opinion. So what? I'm admitting my opinion, but that doesn't mean it's dogmatic. It's not the same thing. So you seem to be using two different definitions in the same conversation. So when you're talking about making these statements about what is outside of the sphere of possibility, you already admitted that you are a theist. And you've told me in the course of this conversation that you cannot make any kind of position about what's outside of your sphere. So why do you?
Okay. Let me be clear, okay? Now, I'm multi-axial. That means that when it comes to science, I'm going to stay with science, okay? When I'm talking about building something on this particular axis, I have absolutely nothing compelling, nothing to offer anyone, period. And so I'm very, very agnostic. I take that position, and that should be
So do
quite
I.
clear.
Okay, so
Okay.
when you have this belief and you admit that the belief is unfounded.
My belief is in a poetic sense.
Okay, so but
So
you're
that's a
saying that,
much different conversation altogether. So it's
Okay, so
not
you-
a belief in saying, oh yeah, I claim that there's something outside of this ball. No, it's not. It's not anything like that.
You're not a
I'm a
theist?
theist in the poetic sense.
I don't know what that means.
Well, I understand that, but that's a different show.
Okay.
I'm simply saying my theism is built on an axis that we haven't even talked about tonight. It's
Okay,
not
so
built upon, okay, and this is the thing that I'm asking. Let's pretend, just for the sake of argument, that we have two guys inside the ball,
Okay.
okay? And one would be me. And I go up to someone and I say, I don't believe there's anything outside of the ball. And someone walks up to me and says, dummy, no one's ever claimed that there's anything outside of the ball. And I said, well, I don't believe there's anything outside of the ball.
Okay.
And someone came to me and said, well, we don't know if there's anything outside of the ball. And I kept saying, I don't believe there's anything outside of the ball. So my point is, here I am in unbelief that there is anything outside of the ball, which has nothing at all to do with a believer. It just has to do with, I don't believe something.
So
Now,
you're
no
saying
one
that
else is a
nobody-
believer. They are all agnostics, and I'm the only one
Except
that's
they're
not
not-
agnostic. I'm taking the position of unbelief. Am I, in any sense, a little bit off here?
way far off.
I'm off? Okay.
Because you're arguing with other people who agree with you, for one thing, which doesn't make any sense. Since nobody else suggested there was anything outside the ball, then who the hell are you arguing with? You don't agree. You don't think there's anything outside the ball either. But what you
Possibly I
seem to be missing-
misspoke. Possibly I misspoke.
With all due respect, sir, one of
Yes,
the
sir.
many things you seem to be missing here is that the idea that having no reason to believe something is a pretty good reason not to believe it.
But AronRa, the point that I'm making is, can you take me to wherever it's at? What kind of methodology do we have in everything that is natural? What kind of methodology do we have that can actually deal with something outside of the ball? We don't have it. And so
Right.
we don't have a logic system for it. We don't have any kind of system. We have
So-
nothing available.
Exactly.
And so it's
Exactly.
obvious
So-
that I'm talking about something that I don't want to believe in. I don't believe anything is outside of the ball. So am I
Don't.
not making an assertion or taking a position without any kind of support, even though
have
it's
any-
just unbelief? And
Do you
no
have any
one
evidence?
in this ball actually believes.
Do you have any evidence that you even have a limitation for the ball?
Can you ask that again?
Do you have any reason to believe that there's even a limitation to the ball?
I have many reasons to believe that there is a limitations, various limitations with inside the ball, yes.
Okay. So you don't believe there's anything beyond, you say that you have limitations for the sphere of perceptible reality, and that there's nothing outside of the sphere of perceptible reality. You've got no reason to believe.
Okay,
there's-
I'm getting some things confused possibly, and I think our viewers possibly might be confused. I'm simply taking the position of unbelief, not because that's where I'm at
And
in this
thing, and the reason
context.
that the
I'm
analogy
I'm just playing the dummy here, okay?
right.
I'm
and the
simply,
reason that the reason that your analogy does not work
okay.
is because you're arguing with other people who also don't believe that there's anything outside the ball. Now you have to be arguing with somebody who's making the unsupported assertion that there is something outside of the ball, because remember, positive claims require positive evidence. Negative claims do not.
Let me ask you about that. You say positive claims require positive evidence. Why do they require positive evidence? I'm not saying they don't. I'm saying, why do they?
Because we can argue all day about whether there was a Darth Vader, right? I mean, but do we have to go back in time to see if there was into every galaxy far, far away a long time ago to see if there was no Darth Vader? I mean, an empty assertion. You can say that there's fairies in the garden. You can say all kinds of negative things. You can say all kinds of things. I don't have to believe any of it. I can dismiss it all. So there isn't. It's incumbent on the one who's making the positive claim to support that claim. To say no, there's not.
Why though? I mean, for
Why?
what purposes? Yes.
Because it is dishonest to assert as fact that which is not evidently true.
It is dishonest to assert as a fact?
Yes.
No, let me put it. I certainly don't think I can make a claim that I can compel you to agree with me.
Well,
It seems to
understand
me that if I'm going to make a claim, the only reason why I would have to back it up with evidence is if I want to prove that claim. What if,
Right.
so I mean, so to me, I think that okay, well, what if I don't have any desire to prove it? I just make the claim.
Then don't. Just make an empty, unsupported assertion and be happy with it. But
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
going to be satisfied with the unsupported
No,
assertion.
and you don't
I'm
have
going
to be,
reject
and
it.
I wouldn't be either. So I'm thinking that when it comes to scientific methodology, of course you have to require that evidence, but that's because science is really trying to go somewhere. What if I'm not really trying to go anywhere? What
Then
if
we
I'm
don't
just
care. Like I
Yeah.
said, science doesn't care what you believe. All that matters is why you believe it.
No, I mean, for scientific purposes, it would matter, but for belief purposes, I don't think it makes
But you have to,
any difference.
let me clarify something. Do you know what a fact is? I mean, the way I define it is that a fact is a point of data which is either not in dispute, meaning that we're both talking about a hypothetical thing.
Yeah.
We're both going to take for granted that X is true for the sake of argument or whatever.
Definable and verifiable. Yeah.
Or we're going to say that in fact is, if it is in dispute, that it's really not disputable or it's indisputable because we can objectively verify it. So a fact is something that we can verify to be true.
Sure.
Now, if you're going to state that you believe there's a God, okay, that's fine. Who cares? I'm going to ask you why. You say I have no reason. Okay, the conversation's done. There's nothing to talk about. But if you start asserting as fact, making a knowledge claim instead of a belief claim, instead of saying instead of saying I believe there's a God, you say that I know there's a God.
Yeah.
Then it's become a lie.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Why? Because
I mean, I'm definitely there. I mean, I do believe in God, but I realize that I don't know that. I really don't.
Let me get to the important thing about stating a fact. I've got many explanations to justify that it is inherently dishonest or that it is dishonest to assert as fact that which is not evidently true. But the very simplest of all of these explanations is that a fact is something that is verifiably true. And if you state something that is not verifiably true as if it is verifiably true, that in its purest form is a lie.
Well, what if I was privy to some particular event that I'm no longer privy to, but I was there and I can't prove it? Can I make that assertion?
There's a sliding scale. There is, as far as credibility. Sagan didn't just say that positive claims require positive evidence. He added that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Now, a lot of religious believers want to think in dichotomies, and they think there's this line.
I disagree with that, by the way.
Well, very good. There's this line at which that people think that there's this line where it suddenly becomes, extraordinary, but it's not. It's a sliding scale. So if you're talking about something mundane that doesn't challenge anything that I know or understand, I don't have any reason to doubt you, so it's not going to be in contest. But if you start contesting things that we know and understand, then we're going to start requiring some evidence, because one thing's got to weigh out over something else. Either what I understand is wrong, or what you're stating is wrong, and so there's a contest between them.
Yeah. Now, if I make some extraordinary claim, I don't think I need any extraordinary evidence unless I'm also expecting you to join me in that extraordinary claim. So extraordinary claims are just extraordinary claims, and that's all they are. And they don't require anything.
But they do need extraordinary evidence, because now.
For what purposes? Well, it's like saying I need to have $1 million if I want to buy a destroyer.
No, it's not like that.
I don't. What do I need extraordinary evidence to make an extraordinary claim? Unless I'm trying to impose that claim upon anyone else, I don't need anything.
Yeah, we're granted. We're accepting that you are going to have to impose this on something else. You're going to assert it as fact. Right, you're going to tell me that this is true, and you expect to compel me to believe that. Now, if I
expect you to accept it as fact,
exactly,
I think you're right. I have to have some.
Okay. And that's the premise that I'm talking about. You're welcome to go believe whatever silly thing you want to believe, but if you want me to believe it, then you have to have positive evidence. And if you're going to give me a claim that also contradicts something else that we know or understand to be true, well, then now you've got a conflict. Yeah, then it requires extraordinary evidence
to compel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not to hold a belief. You're welcome to hold whatever belief you want. Just don't expect anybody else to join you in that.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Right.
Okay, Bob, this question is for you, and I want to go back to this little bitty ball, because I'm a bit confused here, because I happen to think that if I have nothing available, that is facts, information, yada, 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 if I have nothing available to work with, I don't even have a methodology, I don't have a door, I don't have a window, I have nothing. If I were just to take a position, is that good, or is it best not to take a position?
I think we need to address.
I would not think it's good to take a position. Now, to fine tune and nuance it in this way, there's a sense in which, although I am a theist, belief in God is not my position.
Okay, but let's forget about God notions for a moment.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
just.
Can I jump into this?
Yeah, just a minute. Let me ask Bob this. Let's forget about theism altogether. And let's say that this ball just represents just a ball, and we can't get outside of this ball. We can't see anything outside of this ball. We don't know if there's anything outside of the ball or not. There may be nothing or something. The question is, if someone says inside of the ball, hey, I don't believe there's anything outside of the ball, is that a good position to take?
I don't think it's a good position to take. But, in some sense, I can understand how someone might feel like, I remember as a kid thinking about this, where does it all end? But if it ends, doesn't something have to come after that, And so when I'm thinking, if everything is inside the ball, So does the ball have an outside surface? And if so, is it, there's a part of me that thinks it's impossible that there couldn't be something then beyond the ball. But there's another part of me that thinks that how could that even be possible? So I find myself in an intense conundrum.
Yeah, I mean, curiosity is there,
yeah.
obviously. I'm not suggesting that curiosity isn't there, but when it comes to belief sets and pushbacks
I
on
don't
belief
know.
sets and all of that, my question,
I haven't got a clue about what's outside.
right,
The ball.
I'm simply saying, I think that if we are going to claim that, oh, we're in the age of reason, I think the reasonable person would say, let's not take a position. Let's just, that is, of belief or unbelief, let's just say, I don't know. I don't have anything to work with.
I
You're
ain't saying 6.
misunderstanding.
I ain't
You're
saying
misun-
not 6. I'm saying maybe.
You're misunderstanding belief. Okay, so when you're talking about somebody who believes there's a God, he does not know a God exists. And Bob has just expressed he does not know a God exists, but he believes that a God exists. Is that correct, Bob?
That would be correct, sure.
Okay, so Bob does not know that a God exists, but he believes a God exists. Now, the only way that I understand this is that a belief is a conviction. Bob is convinced that a God exists. So he believes that a God exists because a belief is a conviction. A lack of belief is a lack of conviction. I'm not convinced that a God exists. I haven't taken a position, but I have not reached conviction. Nothing has given me reason to convince me. So I have not taken a position. Disbelief is the null set, the default setting. If you hear an outlandish tale, the default setting you start from is to not believe it. And you do not believe it until it convinces you. And if you have no reason to be convinced, you should continue to not believe. And not believing is not a position.
See, I disagree with you in this context.
I know, but you're
I
wrong.
think that what you're, no, I don't think that you're really listening to, and I'm not trying to insult you at all, but I think that when it comes to taking positions, namely inside of the ball, or let's say how we look at things, that is through our perspective, that is in belief and unbelief, that is inside the ball, I don't even know that thinking outside of the ball, number one, is possible. I don't even know that the context of belief or unbelief that is pertaining to anything outside of the ball, I don't even know what that would even look like in a scientific context. And so I think that unbelief and belief that is pertaining to something outside of the ball would be extremely, in a sense, reckless. It would not
And this
be
is where
good
you're
science.
mistaken.
And it's because we don't have anything to work with. And so we have no support at all. And so it's like we're trying to use only inside of the ball logic, methodologies, and all of that to come to certain conclusions and say, well, I just don't believe and I believe. And I think, in a sense, both are just bullshit. And I think the
you
only
are
thing that we
mistaken in
can
that,
say
and
is,
I have
I
already
don't know.
explained four different ways why you are mistaken on that.
Okay.
Okay, and one of them is it's not taking a position if you're not convinced. So you don't have to prove wrong every ridiculous statement that anybody ever makes. You don't have to disprove anybody's unsupported assertion. It's their job to support the assertion. Your default setting is to not believe. That's not a position you take, that's a position you start with until someone convinces you otherwise. You can be open-minded if you want. Allow reason to convince you, but you're not convinced of anything to start with.
Okay,
And then somebody takes the
Including
subject.
you're not convinced that they're wrong either.
Right. Now you have other reasons that you can believe that they're wrong. In the example given before, where the little boy asserts that he believes that it's 6 without any reason to believe that, and the little girl knows that he has no reason to believe that, and knows that he can't possibly have any way of determining that if he doesn't know either of the other two variables, she's perfectly justified.
That's good probability, but it's bad algebra.
Well, no, granted,
Yeah.
but we're not even talking about algebra at this point. We're talking about that he has no information to go on, so why is he even making an assertion?
Okay, but let's pretend for a moment, and please
So
understand
you
my
have to
stress
understand-
of
you have to understand this, please.
pretending. Let's
Dr.
pretend like,
Jones,
okay,
Dr. Jones,
yes.
understand that in your example, the girl has not taken a position. She's only realizing that the boy is statistically in error and that he's making an assertion without any information. See, he's almost certainly wrong to begin with unless he's psychic.
But would the teacher say, little Susie, statistically, that would be one thing to say that you don't believe. But would it not be better to say, I don't know? And so when you approach A plus B equals C,
Right.
I don't
Of
know
course,
of
we
anyone
say
who is
both.
saying, I don't believe it's 6, I don't believe it's this, I don't believe it's that. I see
Right.
people simply saying, let's not take a
Statistically, she's
position.
correct, and you're correct also. There's no way to know, so he was not justified in his statement, and she is statistically justified in her statement.
I don't think that's really comparing apples to apples, but let's move on. Here we go. Okay, back to this little ball. And I want you to pretend with me if you can, okay? I know it's difficult. If you're a theist, it's easy to pretend, okay?
Thank you for making that admission. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
thank you.
yeah. In fact, I wanted to read something tonight, and I like this by Sam Harris, and yet I think that it's, in a sense, crazy. He said, pretending to know things you do not know is a profound liability in science. And so I'm simply saying that pretending to think that we know how to think that is outside of this ball is a profound liability.
And you understand that I agree with you absolutely about that. You're absolutely correct about that.
And so
where you are wrong is in the belief that not believing the claim, the unjustified claim.
But see,
is
that's
somehow
where
a
you're
position.
misunderstanding me. I'm simply saying take away all belief claims, okay? Erase them from your mind. Pretend like no one was making a claim that there is something on the outside of this ball.
So
and
what
someone,
you're saying is that, so you're agreeing with me that the default setting is the null set, that you don't believe anything.
No, that's not what I'm
Do
suggesting.
you start out believing everything?
Okay, if I can finish this, I think you'll get it, okay? Just pretend with me. You've got to just pretend,
Sorry,
okay?
you got me riled up now. I'm in tech.
Remember, once upon a time, far, far away, there was this little ball, okay? And we'll get there. So we have this ball, and no one inside the ball believes that anything, excuse me, everyone inside of the ball says, I don't know if there's anything outside of the ball or not. This has nothing to do with God. They just say, I don't know. We don't have available facts. We don't have available information. But there comes this person along who says, oh, everyone is saying they don't know. But I'm going to make this assertion. I don't believe that there's anything outside of the ball. Now, no one has said that I claim that there's something outside of the ball, or I believe that there is something outside of the ball. In fact, everyone has said, I don't know. But someone comes along and says, I don't believe there's anything outside of the ball. So the question would be, is it better to remain agnostic or to take that position of unbelief?
Well, with that, I think
that person is not
issues.
That person is not being agnostic. That person is not being agnostic. They're
I agree.
Yeah.
And so
but this is completely different than atheism, because atheism is a reaction to a claim. So we start out not believing. We don't believe everything. You would admit that we're not born believing everything, right?
See,
so we're born believing nothing.
But
so we believe nothing to start.
We don't know that. We don't know that. We just that's a good assumption, but we don't know that.
See, I think that the conversation in a sense is muddied because it seems like all of the pushback is against the notions. Let's forget the notions.
Notions?
The claims. Let's forget the claims. Let's say that I just am taking the position, in other words, regardless of whether anyone ever believed, let's pretend like everyone is just agnostic. And someone just says, I'm willing to commit to a position. I don't believe
I'll easily pretend that everybody is agnostic and that everybody admits that there's no way we can know what's outside the sphere of perceptible reality, what's outside of your ball. Nobody knows that. Everybody knows that they don't know that. But one person professes to believe something that they have no reason to believe. Now, since they have no reason to believe, then I have no reason to believe. And as I said, having no reason to believe something is the same thing as having a good reason not to believe it. So
I
when
don't
somebody
agree
makes
with
a
that.
claim that is completely unjustified, then I don't have to believe the unjustified claim. I can't be convinced since I haven't been given a reason. And since the person admits they don't have a reason, then there's nothing to convince me. Having no conviction means having no belief.
Bob, what are your thoughts on what I just shared? I mean, everyone's an agnostic, and someone just says, I don't believe there's anything outside of the ball.
Well, I think that when it comes to, I think the second way you put it was pretty good because, you know, if we start with everybody being saying, well, I don't know, and then somebody says, I don't think there's anything outside the ball. They're now, the problem is that when we use the negative, some people want to claim that the negative is devoid, whereas the negative, other people understand the negative to be a rejection and a counterclaim. So it all depends on what you mean by not, you know, or don't.
It also depends on what you mean by thing, because when they say they don't, you know, if everybody understands that there's a sphere of perceptible reality and that there is a limit to that, that there is a point beyond perceptible reality, and that any statement that we make about that is beyond anything that anybody could possibly know, right? Well, then you're not justified in making a statement either way. But then that's not the atheist position, and the analogy doesn't work because we're responding to claims people make about what is beyond perceptible reality.
The atheist position, do you think there really is an atheist position? I think there's many atheist positions.
I agree with you, Bob, on that because
then
I've read so many things that would suggest that the pushback isn't concerning the claims about God, but the pushback is concerning whether there is God or not. So it's independent in a sense of any of the
We're
claims.
not convinced that there's a God. We have people claiming things that are outside the sphere of reality for which there is no reason to believe them, and in many cases, plenty of good reasons not to.
Now,
There
am I
are logical
mistaken? Does Greg Bray assert that there is no God?
I'm
Is
sorry,
that
what?
Greg Bray is? I can't remember.
What what are you
Greg
saying?
Bray, does he go so far as to assert there is no God?
I do. If you want to use that example, I will assert that there is no God.
Okay, well, isn't that a knowledge claim for what's outside the ball?
For the same reason that I assert that there is no Darth Vader and that there are no leprechauns. I've been on the radio with professional evangelical preachers who admit to me that they will state flat out there's no such thing as leprechauns because there's no reason to believe them, there's no evidence for them. Okay, well, if they can make that statement, then I can make this statement that there is no God. Why? Because for the same exact reason that they just cited. There's no reason to believe it. And here's two things. The only value that I can give to any claim is in how accurate we can show it to be. And within religion, all claims of religion fall into one of two categories: not evidently true and evidently not true. So you have nothing.
Well, you got a universe there that's some 13 billion years old. I don't know that I could make the claim that there's never been a Darth Vader. I mean, I doubt that was his name. But has there ever been a culture that was away in some other star system that actually was in touch with other star systems? I don't know. I have no idea. So although I may not believe that, I don't know what 13 billion years. I mean, my goodness, all kinds of things could have happened elsewhere, a long time ago, in the galaxy far, far away.
Right. Okay. So understand, we're responding to a claim. That's the whole thing about atheism, responding to a claim. People claiming to know what they don't know, and that nobody even can know, yet they profess to know things that they don't really know.
Well,
and
my
we know that
response
they
is,
don't
how
know.
would you know that? And I don't know.
Right. And so my response is, so when people claiming to know things they don't know, and I don't believe them.
Okay, AronRa, I want you to do this. Respond to me, okay? I'm going to say, I don't know. Respond to my, I don't know.
All right.
I don't know that there's anything outside of this ball.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your response?
Okay.
Okay, so in a sense, what you're saying is that you're just pushing back on the claims. Is that correct?
I'm pushing back on the claim that the unjustified claim about what you perceive to be beyond the ball. Now, if you say there's nothing at all, that's too ambiguous, because there could well be lots of things we've never even imagined that could well be beyond that ball. But when you're talking about a specific thing that you do believe is beyond that ball, now we've got a problem.
But isn't it true that when I say, oh, I believe that pencils are outside of this ball. Here's a pencil.
Why? Why do you believe that?
Because I picked up a pencil and it's outside of this ball.
So
Isn't that nice?
proven-
Hey, that's the magic of television. Okay, let's say I believed in pencils outside of this ball. That is a
And
claim,
beautifully
and
proved,
it's far-fetched because I don't know that there are pencils outside of this ball. And so, yes, I respect the position, and this is why I love atheists in my life. I respect the pushback on theism. I get that.
Understand that if you're talking about and I love the demonstration. Why do you believe there's a pencil there? Well, because I just put a pencil beside. That's perfect. Unfortunately, atheists don't get that kind of evidence. What we get is, well, because I believe that. Well, why do you believe it? Because I have faith.
Okay, I get that. I'm so agnostic, forgive me. I just don't know if anything is outside of the ball, and I'm trying to get
So
atheists to say, I don't know either, and that's the rational position to take. Why is that so hard? I understand that you get all kinds of hell from theists who put
You and I
you...
both take the same position. You and I both take the same position. We've always taken the same position. It's impossible to know what is outside of our sphere of perceptible reality. The only issue comes when somebody says, I believe either that there is nothing, absolutely nothing beyond that, because nothing is too, there could well be something that we don't, or the alternate, which is when somebody says, I believe there is X, a pencil, beyond that ball. Well, if you can't produce that pencil, like you so brilliantly did a moment ago, and you're just going to say, well, I believe there's a pencil. My first question is going to be, why? Why do you believe that? I have faith, not a reason. I have no reason to believe you. So
Okay.
no reason to believe. Having no reason to believe something is having no reason to believe something. And I need a reason to believe something.
If atheism is just a pushback on theistic
All right.
claims...
It's a request for a reason to believe something.
Okay, if it's just a pushback on, let's say all of these theistic belief sets, I have no problem with that. However,
But it's not.
however,
requesting a
if
reason
it
to
is a
believe.
position,
And you're telling me, but understand that in this show, you've been telling me that having no reason to believe something somehow is a negative reason to
Well, who said it was negative?
to believe negative. Because
It
he
was
told me it
negative.
was a position. It's not a position. I don't have a
hey,
reason
the
to
only
believe
reason
you.
that I'm using position, and I stated this earlier, and I want to make this clear to our audience, Dawkins keeps saying position. He says the more you understand the significance of evolution, the more you are pushed away from the agnostic position and
Can I
towards
say something about
atheism.
this, please?
And so he's saying, I don't like the position of I don't know. I would
Yeah,
rather go into,
Sounds like Aaron doesn't agree with Dawkins.
Yeah, that's the problem. I'm going to be
So
seeing-
I'm talking about the four horsemen here. It's like you talking about Isaiah, and so I'm going to pick on them because there are many dogmatics being pushed by these four horsemen.
If I may.
Yes.
Yeah, if I may. This is awkward because I'm going to be seeing Dawkins like day after tomorrow. Well, actually tomorrow. I'm going to see
He's a
Dawkins.
brilliant guy, by the way. I'd love to meet him. He's a wonderful person, but I think that he's
He
reckless
is.
sometimes. Yeah.
Not all that personable, but yeah.
Where will you meet him? Where will you see him?
I'm going to be in Kamloops. Oh, no, not Kamloops. I'm going to be in Vancouver, Canada for Imagine No Religion.
Oh, cool.
But the thing is that Dawkins and I have a couple of differences, and that there's differences in language, and I'm sure I'm sure you're going to be sensitive to this. There's differences in languages between Britain and the United States, like for example, with the use of the word Darwinism. Now, in England, there is no problem in using the word Darwinism synonymous with evolution, but in the United States, there very definitely is. There's a great big difference, and that is that Darwinism is a pejorative. meant by American creationists to try to make evolution out to be some kind of a religious belief not supported by evidence. So whenever Dawkins uses the word Darwinism, as he's perfectly comfortable with doing, I am irritated as all hell. I wish he would shut up and stop using the word, the way I perceive it to be, incorrectly. So
I've never heard Darwinism used that way myself, personally.
Yeah, Dawkins is just about the only person you'll hear it from because, I mean, like I said, it's
No, I mean, I've
commonly
never heard it used pejoratively, myself.
You've never heard it pejoratively? Wow. Okay. Well,
No, never have. And I've heard the word. In fact, I've got several. I got lectures by Daniel Robinson. I got lectures, and they mentioned Darwinism, and I've never heard it mentioned as if it was somehow pejorative. I just,
Yeah, like I said, you don't deal with.
I know that evolutionists would say that, or I know that creationists would say that, but they sing that song "I'm No Kin to the Monkey." It's just
yeah, but I mean, American creationists use the word Darwinism as a deliberate insult to try to make.
They do, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. This is the difference. Now in England, and I just recently found out about this because I used to complain at length. I even made a video when I first started doing all of this complaining. I wish that Dawkins would shut up every time he uses the word Darwinism because he's using the word incorrectly. But in England, he's not. He's completely, that's culturally there's a difference there. The meaning is different in England than it is in the United States. So when he's talking about the difference between the agnostic position and the atheist position, it irritates me again because I know that he knows Huxley's work. He knows what Huxley meant. I read Huxley. I know he did. He should know better than what he just said about the agnostic position, because there is no agnostic position. There's not a place between convinced and not convinced. There isn't one. You're either convinced or you're not. Done.
Okay, we have just a couple of minutes left in the show. I want you to offer a major pushback on what I'm saying. I'm trying to get people to become agnostic, and maybe I'm failing miserably.
And you know,
wow.
the one
Jones is the
thing,
wrong guy.
you know what, Dr. Jones?
What?
I'm proverbially clinging to the outside surface.
Your audio just broke up, Bob.
That's kind of teetering towards this idea that there's something outside the ball, and it's feeling rather firm about it. And there's another part of me inside of me that's teetering in a different direction, saying, "Come on, there's nothing out there." And so I, to be honest with you, I don't find myself to be somebody who's convinced or not convinced. I find myself to be a multiplicity of conundrums, and there's a part of me that seems pretty sure there's a God, and there's a part of me that doesn't think it makes any sense, all at the same time. So I don't, I'm a little more complex than just sort of some linear concept on a continuum where I end up being convinced of something. To me, I'm just not there.
What you've just described is a lack of conviction. You just said you're
definitely.
not convinced.
Definitely.
Right.
There's parts of me that have tremendous conviction, and there's part of me that have that recognize the problems with that conviction. Yeah.
Now, you in your situation, you acknowledge at least in your mind, because it doesn't exist for me anymore, but I mean in yours it still does, the possibility that there could be a God.
Not just that's true. Not just the possibility, but I lean in that direction.
Okay, so you're not convinced of that. That's as close to a middle ground as you're going to get. It's still not convinced.
Well, and yet, I'll tell you what. The truth is, though, in my life, that sense of presence, that sense that there's a God, is very meaningful to me. It is.
Now, and I have to say, Dr. Jones, that the presentation that Bob has just given actually leans more to what you've been trying to say all along than I think you've succeeded in doing yourself. Because
I have failed miserably tonight. I've tried to say some things, and
it's who knows.
I'm trying to tell a story.
I would clearly distinguish my position from Bob's. When Bob says that he's not convinced, but he's leaning that way, right? He's evaluating these possibilities. I'm very much in a different position. Now, I would not say that all atheists are in my position, but I would say that all atheists are a little bit further out than he is. And this goes against a lot of what I've been saying previously, because they don't consider a possibility, because, you know, and for me, I can't, because there is no possibility logically that there is a God. A God cannot exist.
Well, that sounds dogmatic to me,
Why?
because you're making a claim.
Why?
You make a claim saying that
Okay.
that there's
Well,
no
if
possibility.
I may
I mean, it's
justify
one
it.
thing for you to say, I don't know if there's a God. It's another thing you say there is no God.
Okay,
Those
if
are two different.
I may justify that, because the way that God is defined is by his miraculous nature, and the miracles are defined as something which defies the laws
So
of
I mean, you don't
physics.
believe in God as defined, but
Well,
who
let's
says
look
that
at
God
it.
has
Okay.
to be as defined?
Okay, well, we have to understand what we're talking about if we know whether
Yeah.
we believe in it or
Well,
not, right?
I'll tell you what. I do not believe in God as he is typically defined. That I can tell you, I don't.
Okay, then it's
Yeah.
it's intangible. It's not possible for me to get a hold of. You have to know the properties of something before you have any idea whether you believe in it or not. As I understand it, that a God is a magical, anthropomorphic immortal, and it's defined by its miraculous nature. Miracles are defined as being inexplicable by science because they defy the laws of physics, meaning that they are physically impossible, meaning that God is physically impossible. And then people say that God exists outside reality, which means God does not exist in reality.
I think you're stuck in the rigidity of the words and not in the possibility of what they may be referenced to. But yeah.
Well, this has been quite interesting. And so I apologize for failing so many people tonight. I was simply trying to make a point, and if I've
Well, it was a sore spot with me, a couple of the things. I always get into arguments over this whole agnostic thing. It's personally irritating because I spent 15 years of my life identifying as an agnostic because I've been lied to about what an atheist is. And when I finally realized what the word atheist really meant, I realized that it had applied to me all along. And it was empowering. It was both defeating and empowering to realize that that word applied to me. It was defeating because I'd been taught to execrate that word, to hate everything that it meant my whole life, because that's an unreasonable position, or so I had been told. And when I finally realized that that horrible, objectionable word actually applied to me, I owned it, and it gave me strength.
That's good. You know, I love the fact that we have atheists and theists alike coming together talking. But, you know, I have to admit, at the end of this show, I am not compelled to be an atheist, simply because I don't know. I
neither
just
do I.
don't know. And so when it comes to committing to a position that is of saying, yeah, you know, I don't believe, I don't know that that's the rational thing to do. It's like the analogy that I gave you earlier. I would not take the position of little Johnny or little Susie. I would say, I don't know what A is. And until I have, you know, more data, I'm not going to jump to conclusions. I'm not going to jump. And I think those kinds of leaps of faith, in a sense, or those kinds of fill in the gaps or whatever, I don't think they are sensible. And
Yeah,
so
and I would
it's
never,
in
I
that
would
kind of
never
posturing.
advocate. I would
Yeah.
never advocate a leap of faith. I won't take a faith position on anything ever in my life because it's the most dishonest position it is possible to have. But I understand that I take the null set as a default position. I do not believe, just like we're all born not believing anything. It's not that we believe everything, we believe nothing. And we only believe things once we are convinced of these things. And eventually we may realize that we've been deceived or whatever. We are no longer convinced, and that's fine. But we still start from a null position, right?
Well, let me say this, and I say this hopefully in a true sense of humility. I would hate to think that I'm so arrogant to think that we have the kind of science that knows all. I had a person on my show the other day that said that human beings at some point possibly could know everything. And
Okay, so what?
but let me finish it. Let me make my point. I don't know, and I am painfully aware of the various things that we can do, that is, in science, and I realize that we are still exploring, and I love that, and so I love taking the position of I don't know, and I like, the journey. I like the process. I don't like drawing a conclusion when it's not reasonable. And so my point is, in
And
doing
you-
this
you-
show with the
why?
ball,
That's why I'm an atheist.
well, I'm saying is, I think many of us really have the science behind us and the philosophy behind us that can say, that we can take that have something. And I'm going to claim that theism and atheism have thing available. They have is the more rational.
Which is not valid, by the way. The agnostic position, I'm still having, it does not exist.
Let me put this on the table. I think that, in a sense, I jumped to the conclusion that I need to be pushed into. So I don't know enough about the cognitive.
Born. We don't. So here, but the problem that I have with this, and it's a big problem, is the double. Okay, but you are arguing that it's somehow that there's a God outside the sphere of reality, that it's open-minded. Okay,
I'm not making that
I
argument.
didn't
you are
hear that
saying
argument either.
you
Yeah.
are somehow equivalent.
No, I'm not saying it's egalitaric at all. I'm not saying it's egalitaric. In fact, someone asked me the other day, are they equally, are they equally so? No.
Yeah,
On different,
meaning that neither one knows. You say that both of them have taken a position. And I'm saying that the one who doesn't remains in the position they were born in, as we should all start with the null set as a default position.
I have no idea what the position is of somebody from the beginning. Don't know. In fact, most of us have no memories past the age, prior to the age of 4. We don't know what we
Yeah, I
thought or
mean,
what we
there's a
what we-
lot.
what we sense as a
Yeah,
reality.
there's a lot of work to be done in determining, what is, that is from our Genesis. But, I think this is a wonderful discussion, and I'd like to thank you for coming on the show, because talking about this ball is important to me, like I said, because I don't know. I don't know what's outside of it. There may be something, there may not be anything. I just don't know. I don't have the tools to work with. I don't have a window, I don't have a door, I don't have anything.
Did you all ever see the movie This Is Spinal Tap?
Yeah. Yes.
You did? Okay. So every time Dr. Jones holds up this ball, you know what I hear when he says, I have a ball, I hear, this goes to 11.
Yeah, my theology goes to 11. Nigel,
It's time to sign off right now. Daryl, final thoughts and we're out of here.
Well, I think this was a good show for me to just sit and listen and spectate, but I must say, I believe I don't know. And really, I've enjoyed listening and watching Aaron. I've never seen you smile and laugh so much, and I have enjoyed that. I think you've had a good time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
I hope to have AronRa in Pensacola as soon as possible, because he is an awesome individual. With that said, we're not going to 11. We're going to sign off, and we're going to do it with this ball. And AronRa, please say perhaps and do it like Barnabas Collins. Come on, go for it.
I got to tell you, I can't remember that show. It's been so long since I've seen it, but perhaps.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good night.